Welcome to the Make Work Not Suck podcast.
Ryan, we need to circle back and put a pin in that conversation about recontextualizing the out-of-the-box e-business. We need to deploy some scalable deliverables and brand our cloud platforms. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you are not alone, because I am pulling this straight from www.thebullshitgenerator.com. But if you thought I was reading an actual corporate memo, you're not wrong, because most corporate communications sound like the bullshit generator. Is corporate comms actually making our jobs harder instead of easier? Is corporate communications making work suck?
Absolutely, because it's all bullshit. We deal with enough crap every single day. Why the hell do we need another bullshit email in our inbox of rah-rah and eye-rolling?
Yeah. So if everybody knows that corporate comms suck and the majority of employees hate it, why is it still happening? Like, why are people still putting out this kind of nonsense?
Because leadership books tell you how to be a leader in practice, and leaders read those books and then just do the things in the books and are so disconnected from reality and what their people really need and want.
I think that disconnects a big piece. I don't know how many people are executive leaders, especially, are really in touch with what's actually going on at the ground level of their organization. So what do you think is worse? Radio silent leadership or endless buzzword blasts?
Oh, they both suck.
They both suck.
I guess the endless buzzword, at least they're making an attempt. So you can get like a 1%, you're still failing as a leader, but I guess you're at least trying and failing, versus the radio silent is you don't care at all. So I guess I would rather have the BS one, but
oh, I would go the other way. I would rather have no communication than intentionally vague and misleading communication.
Well, okay, that's true. So it goes back to the intention. If
Right.
you're blasting emails with the intention of like hoping that it's, like, look here and don't pay attention to the shit show behind you, or you're trying to convince me things are better than they really are, and that's your intent,
Right.
then yeah, I'm with you. I'd rather just have a radio silent leader than someone creating, bullshit. So I guess it goes the intention. If you're actually trying to communicate, then I'll give you still a fail, but 60% versus if you're doing it for manipulation. And I think I don't know, I'm going to go 50-50 on this. I'm curious what you think. Like, how many of these leaders are sending these emails because they think they're doing good, versus how many of them are sending these emails because they're trying to fake their way through something or make you believe something that's not true, just hoping that propaganda. We'll just go with that. How much of this is internal propaganda versus a leader disconnected from reality and just creating buzzword bullshit?
I don't like the word propaganda, because, and it's probably true in some places, but most of the leaders that I work with, they genuinely care, but they're disconnected, right? They don't know what the reality is. And so the picture that they're painting is the picture they're seeing. It's just not the picture that everybody else is seeing. And so I think it's sincere, but it's nevertheless misguided, because they're painting a picture for people that does not connect with their day-to-day reality.
Yeah, that's where I go with visionary leader that thinks things are better. And when I use the word propaganda, I think there are some leaders that are legitimately using it as propaganda to try to make things, better than they are, or, a false facade because of the, lying, stealing, and cheating going on under the hood, or, the toxic culture, they're trying to glaze over it and they're the center of it. I think that's actual propaganda, and it's corporate bullshit, because you're basically faking it and lying, versus the leader that is genuinely just disconnected from reality. So
hold on. You're saying that you don't get motivated by the jargon filled, we're all one big corporate family email? Like, that doesn't get you out of bed in the morning?
Hell no. Not when it's disingenuine, not when it's disconnected from reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think, though, that sometimes this is it. This is a failure by committee, right? It's not that one person sat down and wrote a bullshit generator memo to the whole company. Oftentimes it is one person starts it, somebody else edits it, then legal has to review it, then HR has to review it. And especially in large organizations, by the time it gets sent, all the soul has been sucked out of it. And it's just a giant CYA. Like it's not actually achieving whatever the original intent was, because there's so many hands in the creation of it that it gets stripped of its soul.
I would agree if we're talking, large company,
larger organizations.
Definitely agree there. That playbook is disconnected from reality, and everybody's, doing their job in a silo to check a few boxes.
If you're big enough to have a corporate comms department, that's the problem you're facing.
But I think, since at least in America, like 2/3 of Americans are employed by small business, and you still have the owners that get on, the 30, 40, 50 people get on a weekly, monthly, whatever, stand up, State of the Union, etc. And half of it is corporate BS.
Yeah, it is.
And you know what? A lot of people are going to go, any business owner that listens, they're like, well, I don't do corporate BS. Okay, you may not be actual corporate BS, but you're probably kidding yourself, or you have a vision that is not connected to reality. Like you're so visionary that you're disconnected from your culture, that it comes off as bullshit because it's disconnected from the pain everybody's feeling every single day, especially with everything going on right now. There's still disruption from the election. There's disruption from the tariffs. There's just a lot going on. Interest rates are still high. Mortgage rates are high.
Travel ban just went into effect today.
Wait, travel ban just went into effect? What travel ban just went into effect?
Don't ask. We'll do another episode about it.
Okay, well, whatever happened. I mean, again, there's just so much change going on. I mean, even with changes in AI, AI, there's new AI models coming out, more advanced in AI, and there's just stuff's all over the place. Don't get so disconnected from your people that you're sending crap.
Yeah.
It just makes work suck.
It does. Yeah. If you're a business leader, business owner, executive, and you're writing an email right now that you're sending to a large group of people, please stop. I can hear the eyeballs rolling already. I would say take whatever you've written, put it into ChatGPT, and say, please rewrite this for me like I'm talking to a 12-year-old. And that's not an insult to your employees. What that's forcing you to do is bring your language down to a very simple, understandable, so there's no buzzwords, because you can't talk corporate buzzwords to a 12-year-old.
Okay, so that I agree with when in that context, but I also question. I'm all for using ChatGPT. Don't get me wrong.
Okay,
it is all in the prompting, right? Mm-hmm. I think if you basically say, I want to send this letter and write it for 12-year-olds, you might actually generate corporate BS the other way, right? Like you people stupid because they don't get it. What you want to be is authentic. Don't create buzzwords. Don't use jargon that is not standard in the business, and don't use fluffy words to paint a picture that's not real. The one that pisses me off the most is when we don't want to show the P&L. And I'm going to expose every detail of the P&L, but if you're not exposing the performance of the company, but you're trying to use all these fluffy goals and objectives and warm and fuzzy things to talk about how the company's doing, like you're just hiding the truth. Just be authentic. Just share the truth and just be honest with people. Right. And keep it simple. Don't justify. Don't overthink it. Now, if you want to prompt for ChatGPT, take that and put it in. Help me make this authentic. help it resonate with the audience. I don't want to
Right.
sound like a corporate bullshit generator. I want to make sure I'm being as transparent, as respectable and responsible. You still have a responsibility with information, so oversharing can be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where people fall short, is they're just disconnected, and or they're afraid of exposing the truth. And if you expose the truth, then everybody's going to leave, or they're going to be pissed off. You'd be surprised. The more authentic you are, you actually build more trust. Isn't that a shocker?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
people, there's so few places in the world right now where somebody will give you the honest answer about what's really going on, that people are drawn to that. Even if it's a disaster, they're drawn to the fact that, hey, thank you for being honest with me. Yeah, we're in a hard spot, but at least I know, and now we can figure out how we're going to get out of this together. All right, so let's jump into the corporate jargon problem. I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different companies. And one of the things I find hilarious is that almost every industry and every company has their own jargon, their own list of buzzwords. But why is that? Like, why is there so much BS everywhere?
Oh my God. All right. So you're definitely getting me on a rant today.
Go for it.
I think we want to be special snowflake unicorns, and we want to be unique. And we were taught when we were young that we are special and unique. And again, we are. We all come with our special talents and gifts and stuff. But we feel like if we put it in this buzzwordy phrase, it makes us different. And the reality, all you're doing is you're making complexity that's unnecessary, or you're trying to, and don't get me wrong, there are some things that make sense to do that. We'll use the military, for example, right? There's a lot of codes and jargon, like they're the worst at
oh yeah, military's the worst.
But a lot of times those things are put together because they can communicate very fast. And there's a lot of training that goes involved. What is this glossary of terms? What are these definitions? And it's a tactic to speed up communication. Okay, that makes sense. But my guess is you're not the military going on a secret op. And so you don't need to overcomplicate the phrasing inside your organization. Just call it what it is. Why do we have to pretend? Is it to boost our own ego? Is it an ego trip? Is it an identity crisis? Like, I honestly have no idea what the drive for this is, and it drives me absolute bonkers.
All right. As the token MBA holder here, I'm going to have to throw myself under the bus. I'm going to blame graduate schools for this. Because one of the things that I learned in grad school is this whole idea of abstraction, right? And I think abstraction in many cases is important, but it also becomes a way that you can sound smarter by saying confusing things, right?
So an ego trip, basically.
Yeah, basically an ego trip.
Like in the room,
like this is a pencil. We should all just call this a pencil. However, I got an MBA, so I'm going to call this a manual communication device.
Oh, you did that way too well.
Right. Oh, I did well in grad school. And so now when we talk about manual communication devices, well, we could be talking about pens or pencils, or your stylus, right? And so there may be a time and a place where that level of abstraction is helpful in a conversation. But most of the time, I would say 90% of the time, it's like, grab your pen or pencil and go do this, right? You don't have to say, grab your manual dictation device. So it's a way for people with too much student loan debt to justify the decisions they've made.
You're doing this. You're playing your part way too well here. So I am going to double back on myself a little bit.
Okay.
Because I think there's a different problem why we create it. So I think there's the one side where we think we're the special snowflake and we want to be the special snowflake. The other side of it is I think we get caught in the semantics of terms And then so what we do is we invent a new term because we couldn't figure out how to get on the same page about the previous term.
Yep. I've seen that.
I run into this one all the time with Agile Scrum. Product owner. Well, we can't agree on a product owner, so let's call it something else and redefine it. Why don't we just define what product owner means for us? Like, let's just use an industry term and define the definition for us, as opposed to creating a whole new term with a whole new definition that's only 20% difference at best.
Right.
So it's I think at the end of the day, it's the lazy way out.
I think it is that. I think it's also MBA students trying to impress people. I think there's also a level of corporate CYA, right? Cover your ass. Like, there's a lot of jargon that is used to, kind of hide what's really going on. So you can't get clear line of sight. Like, it's intentionally vague, right? Mistakes were made. Like, hold on, whoa. We're, like, nobody's taking ownership of that. Like, we're just saying mistakes were made. Who's accountable for this? We're not saying, right? And that's by intent. So I think there's also situations where corporate comms are intentionally vague because they don't want to get sued.
Well, okay, that's, and I'll take the other approach to that. I think people use that same thing, and it's not because they don't want to get sued. When you're talking like a company of 30, 40, 50 people, 100 people, let's be honest, either A, they're the ones that made the mistake and don't want to admit it, or B, they're covering for somebody else, or B, and I think this is where there's the legit use of it, is if everybody is a part of it, then everybody's at fault. And so it's one of those situations, like if you need to fire like 15 people because of an actual mistake, then okay, mistakes were made. Here's what we learned. But I think it goes to the transparency of it. What was the mistake? What are you recovering from it? Like, be authentic and transparent about it. Don't cover up for the fact that, A, you're the one that screwed up and you're trying to avert accountability, or you're trying to avert it for somebody else. I think that's where we take it. It's, what is it? All words are made up. They can be used for good or evil.
Yeah.
So what's your intent behind it, I think, is that, and I think that gets to the root of it. If you're using it for evil, expect bad things. If you're using it for good, with good intentions, you're probably in a better place.
Yeah. And people generally give you the benefit of the doubt. Can you think of the worst buzzword or jargon memo you've ever sent or received? I know I have done some bad ones.
Oh, well, you've been on the receiving end of some of mine. I don't know. What have been some of my bad ones?
Oh man. Yours are usually pretty direct. If they sting a little bit, it's direct. And there's not a lot of buzzwords in it.
I think I've been on the receiving end of more BS generated ones
than the giving end.
Yeah. I'd be biased on my own, so I need somebody else to judge me on how well I'm doing. But I think the worst one I've had is, it was a company that loved generating buzzwords, and they used so much in their marketing and everything about it that just the entire interaction with the company was just BS buzzword generator. And then when they're using those buzzwords to talk about how the company is doing amazing when it's, negative growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll go on a rage if I go any further with that one.
So moment of confession here. That thing that I read at the very beginning, the bullshit generator, is an actual website. Bullshitgenerator.com. It's one of my favorites. I use it regularly. And there have been seasons in my career where I would...
Do you use it regularly as an MBA to fill your documentation? Is it what you use to actually write your messages and memos we're bitching about?
No, but I have used it in past lives, like challenged my coworkers, being like, you've got to use whatever the next phrase is in your report out to the CEO next month. And so you have to find a way to incorporate that, whatever the BS is.
I know we're rabbit trailing here, but that sounds like fun.
Oh, it was awesome.
You're basically using the corporate bullshit generator as the Easter egg to see if somebody can spot it. Okay, that's just fun. I encourage that because that makes work not suck. It makes work fun. But
that was actually fun. And see if you can get away with it, right? Like if you can like slide that in there in front of your client and they read it and they don't just like call BS on you in the moment and you got away with it. Fantastic.
Yeah, make sure you do it in a positive moment, not when like the customer's about to fire you or you're
yeah.
But I encourage that. We should make work fun, and that's something that makes work fun. Okay, so that's using the bullshit generator for fun. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you. Go back to where you were.
No, so I know that I am guilty of this because I think I'm kind of wired this way, and I've gotten in trouble at several points in my career for my vocabulary, not 4-letter words, but just using larger, more complex language than I need to. And that's something I've honestly got to work on is, okay, how do I not dumb it down, but just use easier to understand language as opposed to my manual dictation device.
You know what my manual dictation device is? I'm going to suck at doing this because all I use this pencil for is to, and I just dropped it, is I use
throw it around your office
as a fidget. So it's my sophisticated thinking enhancement tool as I just spin it around and drop it apparently. See, I can't do it. I can't do it.
I have been in, very, very small organizations, very large organizations, Fortune 100. I don't see this as much in smaller companies, but in large organizations, I've seen these massive newsletters, right? These 800-word spam to the whole company. I don't know anybody who's actually read the whole thing. Most of them just get skimmed and deleted. So I don't know who's doing that, but it's too long, didn't read. Like just there needs to be a better way to communicate.
See, I will say this. I think when you get to it goes back to if I talk really fast or if I use big words, I sound smart. Mm-hmm. If I make it 800 words and use a lot of BS in there, then people will believe it. It's like the convincing strategy. Like if you're just trying to convince people by saying the same thing over and over, which again goes back to propaganda. I don't think there's anything wrong with an 800-word, bulletin, note, post, if it's legitimately like that big of a thing. You're providing backstory, context, the path forward. If you are providing people genuine content, people will read lengthy things. But when you're doing it for fluff, when you're doing it to try to convince somebody, you're repeating, again, you're not being transparent. You're using it to kind of like you're beating around the bush. And so you're taking the long way around. And so you need 800 words to avoid the train wreck. That's the one they're going to sniff the BS in the first, paragraph and then just hit ignore.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think would happen if a company outlawed all buzzwords for a month?
I think things would get done.
All right, but you'd have to define buzzword. Like how do you know the difference between a buzzword and an industry term?
Well, I think let's define industry term. If it's something that if you quit your job today and go work for a competitor, and they use the exact same term because it's in that field of work.
Same industry.
That is not a self-generated industry term. So as it decides, industry term, it's industry-wide, everybody uses it, et cetera, et cetera. I'll use like in Agile Scrum world, product owner, Scrum Master, backlog, common terms. Mm-hmm. If it's a jargon word that's internal, that's not an industry term.
I think there's a third category. I agree with both of those. There's industry terminology, which you're right, is valuable because it communicates things to everyone. It communicates meaning to everyone in that industry. There's internal words, but then there's this third category, which is just BS, right? It's all of the, let's circle back. Let's put a pin in it. It's all the things that Dilbert's made fun of, that Office Space made fun of. Like there's this whole other category of just office lingo that is just so cringeworthy. We need to outlaw that.
Okay. So I get what you're saying there. So it's not so much about, well, like you said, there's jargon words that are created to describe something that's complicating it. And then there's the language like, let's put a pen in it.
Ooh, synergy.
See,
yes.
That's a, I see, I love that word, but I totally get where everybody has destroyed it.
I honestly think the word strategy should be outlawed too. I think everyone wants to talk about strategy, and that is a term that is so badly misunderstood. We should just remove it from our dictionaries.
Well, the problem is, as soon as you give it a new word, the problem is we don't hold ourselves to the definition of the word, because we overgeneralize what strategy is. A lot of times we confuse strategy with tactics, with execution. Then you got layers
with vision.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you got layers of strategy, like something, someone that does, processing at a 1 week level is a different, what a strategy for them is tactics to somebody that operates in a month level, and
right.
somebody that works a year and multi-year. So you have, if you don't put context around the word,
or time horizons,
et cetera. So that's the one thing that drives me insane. And I think that's where it becomes bullshit generator, is when you throw those words around out of context.
Yes.
It's understanding the definition of the word, the context of the word. And when you use it inappropriately, again, usually because there's an ego drive and you're trying to sound smart, like, can we just fix the culture problem? Like it's not a journey problem. It's not the word's fault. It's the culture and how we use the word is the problem.
Oh, I think culture might be another one that badly needs definition.
I agree.
People talk culture all the time, and usually they're not talking about the right thing.
I agree. That's another, that word, and you're right. That word in itself is another buzzwordy thing. And I think it gets into the semantics of the vision of the culture versus the social emotional connection of the culture. And the problem is we're not connecting on the social emotional level when we're using language.
That's an interesting statement. Say more about that.
Understanding, right? Communication.
Mm-hmm.
I say something, you have to interpret it through your filter. You have to say it back or process it back. You send it back, and then we basically have a handshake agreement of, do we agree on the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
That's 3 steps in communication. I don't think we're doing that around our communication with these words, and it's one way. And so what's happening is we're not connecting to words on a social emotional level to make sure we're all on the same page, the same definition, have the same belief, same understanding, so that when we use the word, it drives meaning. We use it in a way that creates disruption on the social emotional level. And that's where it becomes bullshit. Because there's no common definition, common understanding, common value. It's just bullshit.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about that and what happens as the world gets more and more digital, because I think as the world gets more and more digital, there's less and less back and forth, right? It's one directional, and then a one directional that's not really a conversation. And without conversation, it's very hard to get to a common understanding of terms. And so we just keep throwing more and more BS at each other, but we're not actually creating more clarity.
I know this is going to sound a little contradictory. In sometimes some events, if you will, you're in an exploratory, you're exploring, you're doing new definitions, you're going into the unknown, you're in the inventive phase or build phase of whatever it is. And so you may be testing something out. You may be trying something new. You may be in uncharted waters. And so it's rough.
Right.
okay, that's where we make, my definition of, mistake versus sin. There is no so much thing as a repeat mistake.
Mm-hmm.
The second time you did it, you cognitively did it knowing there's a consequence or lack thereof, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I think it's in that exploratory phase, I think we need more grace. But when we're not in that exploratory phase, we've got to hold ourselves to it and be more like it's the IQ EQ balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm probably more guilty of that than you are. I think on a scale from 1 to make it stop, I think my communications are probably at the we need you to tone it down level.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the whoosh, that was blunt.
Yeah, I think that's more your style is, ooh, that I get what you're saying. It stings, but I get it.
Yeah, I do think this gets into the ego component of it is we let our egos get in the way. And I know it's
Mhm.
hard. I mean, it's human nature, right? Like we want to win, we want to be first place, especially growing up in America, we want to be the best. We want to be first place. We want to win everything.
Mhm.
And, our ego gets in the way. And so then we do things to either boost our own ego or protect our ego, etc. And I think that's just where the definition of words and how we communicate things, how we phrase things just gets in the way. Whereas this goes back to what's the goal? What's the mission here? So even in all these corporate communications, like what's the vision of the company? What's the goal of the project, et cetera, et cetera? And just reality check. Why? I really don't get why is this so hard? I know I'm not a special snowflake when it comes to this kind of communication. Why is it so hard on a larger scale? Are we just that accountability scared or avoidance of accountability? Or
Yeah, I think we should ask our listeners why they think it's so hard. I've got my ideas, but I'd love to hear what other people think too.
hopefully we get some comments.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about tone deaf messaging. Let's talk about the classic out of touch executive memo. Layoffs on Monday, motivational quote on Tuesday. What are some of the worst ones that you've seen that are just so painfully out of touch?
All right, so I have to go with like my favorite meme. Everybody's seen this, and if you haven't, you've been under a rock. It's the one with the little girl with the little smirk on her face, and like the house is on fire, and the firefighters are trying to put the house out, and it's like everything's fine. Or like or the one with the dog holding the coffee mug where everything's on fire, and it's like it's all good.
Right.
Dumpster fire one, like pick one. There's a handful of them. What I hate and where I have seen is exactly that. Mass layoffs and then just not acknowledging it and going straight into it. I've seen that time and time and time again. And you know what the theme was? Well, if we talk about it, then people are going to be concerned for their jobs. So we better be inspirational. We need to lift everybody's spirit by telling them all the good things that are coming and, to get them distracted from the layoffs that just happened. Has anybody heard of the grief curve? Hello? Like, this is not rocket science. If you don't manage your communication to a grief curve, you probably just fired their, work friend or someone like you just dumped more workload on them or you went from work sucking to work sucking more probably. Now, maybe it was out of your control. Maybe some, tariffs got put in play and you had to downsize quickly to, there are times you have to make hard sacrifices to keep the company alive and save those that remain. Like that's just sucks. Now, if you're doing it just to squeeze profits, well, that's a different problem. But if you don't think through the ramifications of your message, and then 2 days later or a day later, this one, fire everybody on Monday, inspirational quote on Tuesday.
Yeah.
You're just asking for a more toxic workplace. Can you give you an example where this has been done well? Maybe
You want to hear a good example or a bad example first?
Well, I've got a couple of good ones.
Give me some good examples, because I've got some incredibly bad ones.
Well, and let's put it this way. This was not fire everybody on Monday and motivational speech on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
This was reality check on Monday. Tuesday, how can we look forward and look past this and find ways to be better? Mm-hmm. Wednesday, and it was and the one I'm thinking about most particularly, it was in COVID. We were forced to make tough decisions. Nobody knew what was going on. We had to make tough decisions, but we still took care of the people in the process. One, first and foremost, is you still have to frickin' give a damn and care about people.
Right.
So making hard decisions, giving a damn, still taking care of people, and then talking about like giving people time to breathe, acknowledging that, hey, I know you may have just lost your friend at work or your work coworker, or you may be taking on workload. I understand that. I hear you. I want to figure out how to make this better. Like, we have to evolve. We have to move forward. Like, it's talking about the journey.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big one is we go to vision results. We fire everybody, and then we just want to get to a result. So we do the fluffy one. And then what happens? The culture's out of alignment. And then we wondered why nothing's changed after laying everybody off.
Right.
It gets worse.
It gets worse.
All right. You got an example of going bad?
So I was part of a company that got acquired by, large company got acquired by an even bigger company. And the CEO and founder was the primary owner, owned most of the company as it sold for a ridiculous amount of money. And he sends an email after the acquisition's, I think, announced. And I think it's after it's announced, he's retiring. He invites anybody who wants to come visit his winery in Australia to come on by, and, offers them free bottle of wine or something like that. Well, he's offering it to a bunch of people that just got acquired. Like, they're all panicking about whether or not they're still going to have a job. And he's saying, hey, if you're ever in Australia, please feel free to stop by the winery. So some friends of mine sent this to Dilbert, or the guy who wrote the Dilbert comic. And a couple of weeks later, there was a comic that kind of mirrored those circumstances. And I think the tagline on the Dilbert comic was like, please don't park your helicopters next to the human chess set. It upsets the garden gnomes, or something like that. And it was just so out of touch from, look, there are people here that need this job. They are paycheck to paycheck. And if they don't have a job at some point in the next couple of weeks, they're in a lot of trouble.
But you can blow all of your money to go to Australia to his winery.
And this guy's got wineries and private jets, and, I no hard feelings towards him. He's obviously done very well and been very, very successful, but now is not the time to draw attention to your jet setting lifestyle when everybody else is worried about being able to pay their mortgage.
Yeah, that's a good one. I have seen a few things like that. And that, that does happen in the small business world when a founder
sure does
typically exits, and they're celebrating their success, and they've had the company for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're excited about it. You're right. Everybody is panicking on the other side because they don't know what their job is. And
right.
It's like, just be a little bit in touch of reality. Just think through what this looks like. It's awesome. You want to celebrate. Mm-hmm. Congratulations for arriving, but maybe pick the audience that you invite to your winery or your ski shanty, or
right. Yeah. Your chateau.
Yep.
Are leadership communications doing more harm than good? Like, do you feel like these kinds of all hands or town hall meetings or just, massive emails, uh, are are they a net add or a net detractor to most organizations?
I think, I don't know, it's hard to say because I'll give you a couple examples in a second, but I think overall, if the leader doesn't really have a good idea of what they're doing or why, I think they're just waste of time and energy.
Mm-hmm.
There's one meeting I join every Friday. It's a company-wide stand-up, predominantly remote organization, people all over the world. And it is an absolute circus. The visionary is ADD all over the place, but you know what everybody loves about it? He's genuine, and he loves to have fun at work. He loves to celebrate the wins. He loves to prop everybody up.
Great.
And I think it's one of those, like, it's all over the place. Like literally like mid-sentence, like over here, and you're like, okay, so what's the objective we're doing again? And the leadership team, we have to kind of jump in and course correct a little bit. But everybody loves it. And he ends every meeting with like some song. Sometimes he finds it like 5 minutes before the meeting, and it's like it's like a send off to a on the weekend. But the thing is people are informed.
Okay.
It's a little comical because it's a little bit of a circus.
Yep.
It's absolutely genuine because the owner is trying to build that community and push things forward. And so even though it fails as like it's like a successful failure. So
yeah,
even what I would call a successful failure, he's doing it 1,000 times better than the average business out there.
Wow.
Because he's genuine, authentic, and upfront about what he's trying to do. Plain and simple.
Yeah. I think that authenticity thing it's said a lot, but it's still overlooked. I think many leaders hide their personality behind kind of the corporate veil, right? And they sound very corporate-y. And I think that their communications would go a lot farther and be much better received if they were just a little bit more human in their communication and less MBA corporate shill.
Yeah. Well, so should we throw in the generational perspective into this whole thing?
Oh, that's always fun. Sure, let's go for it.
Because Gen Zs aren't sending emails about what's going on. And I'm willing to bet they have a lot more emojis, and it's a lot more words. You're like, you know what? That's probably a funny one. You want to talk about corporate jargon BS. Okay. I'm willing to bet most boomers and Xers for sure, maybe some millennials because Gen Zs are, baby brother, sister. By the way, the millennials, we invented emojis. Ours are just the old school ones, not the graphical ones, the text ones. Right. So just throwing that out there. I think if a Gen Xer or a boomer was reading something from a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha, especially got an older Alpha now, they would probably think it's corporate bullshit generator or just social bullshit generator because the words are just like, what? But to that generation, it totally makes sense.
I would love to see somebody do that. Like put out a corporate comms and have like 4 different videos and be like, if you're Gen Z, click here. If you're Gen Alpha, click here. And it's the same guy who's just got the same message, but written in 4 different scripts, one for each generation. That's actually not a bad idea. Like it would be fun. People would enjoy it. You could get ChatGPT to translate it for you. So you get all the skibbity riz giat appropriate for the Gen Alphas. That would actually be a fun way to start communicating and say, look, you feel free to pick the one that works best for you, but here's 4 options.
King Daniel, man, he's been in the kitchen cooking. I mean, the sauce is absolute peak. You're going to love it.
I can't take that seriously.
That was almost a Reddit post I put on Reddit the other day. That like
Okay.
voted crazy and everybody's like dogpiling on it. Yeah, that's just the lingo apparently.
Hey, more power to you. It's not a language I speak.
But
But I do think that there's a grain of truth there in the fact that communication is such a generational thing. Both the medium, right? So whether we're talking emails, whether we're talking texts, or face-to-face conversation, and then the wording that's actually used in that communication, those are very much, they vary widely by generation. And so I think that as we continue to have, 3 or 4 different generations in the workplace at the same time, I think it becomes an idea that leaders need to consider of, do I need to take this message and to some extent translate it to my different audiences so that I'm doing the best job I can of communicating what I'm trying to communicate in a way they can hear and understand.
I think it comes down to what you started with, right? Like write this for a 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can write things in a way that is more generic versus when you try to be very particular. Of course, like I don't think you need to write like a boomer version and an X version and a millennial version and a Z version. But I think this also goes back to connecting with your people. Like if you have a large Gen Z workforce, maybe throw a few of those words in there. It might capture their attention. I mean, genuinely do it. Like, don't just do it because ChatGPT put it in there. But like, I think that's where there's still common ground. Like we all speak English. We all know the basic words. I say basic words, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's just resonate with your audience. And if
Right.
and it doesn't mean pick one audience, but make sure your message resonates. Or, I think there's even been in communications, like you can even be like, hey, for my Gen Zers in the company, blah, 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 blah. And for my Xers in the company, da, 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 da. Like that makes it fun. It makes it funny. Now, again, that's got to be on a less serious topic and don't be doing that in a negative way. Again, it's all in how you use the communication. But I do think there's a level of, if you're a boomer and you're writing emails and you've got the harsh tone, grind away, you work for me and you should be proud of it. Like that's not going to resonate with your younger employee base.
Yeah.
So I don't think that means you have to tailor it for every single one. Just be aware of your audience and use common language. Make it simple. But I think that's what's the jobs phrase, right? Simple is harder than complex.
Right.
We go to complex because it's easier for us, but it only makes communication harder. Take the time and energy to make it simple, and it'll actually get the message across.
In today's episode, we're spilling the tea on corporate cringe. Why work talk be sounding fake, dusty, and straight up tone deaf. From buzzword bingos to cold AF emails, we're calling out the stuff that low key kills the vibe at work.
Did you just chat GPT that?
Absolutely, I did. Absolutely, I did.
I love it. I love it. I love it. That was great. That was great.
All right. Let's start wrapping it up. What's the first thing that people need to know about fixing corporate comms?
I think just simple, authentic, to the point. Don't try to outsmart them. Don't try to be propaganda. Don't try to sound smarter. Don't try to fake it. Don't try to hide the truth. Just keep it simple, to the point. Don't beat around the bush, authentic, and use common, simple language.
Yeah.
Your people
simple and authentic. That's the 2 words I'd give, simple and authentic.
Yep.
What's the biggest mistake most companies make when talking to their employees?
Not connecting with the audience. Like
the lack of EQ.
Like the guy emailing about his winery in Australia after an acquisition. That I think is the number one thing, is when the people writing the communications are disconnected with the people doing the work.
Yep. Yeah. Especially disconnected on the emotional level. What would you recommend as a step that leaders can take today to improve their communications. We talked about simple and authentic.
If you're delivering bad news, utilize the grief curve.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are going to accept it in different ways. They're going to internalize different ways. They're going to overcome it in different ways. And if you just are going to shoot out negative input, and it may be authentic and it may be, outside of your control, environmental or whatever, but if you're going to deliver bad news, take the grief curve into consideration. Otherwise, you're going to look insensitive with your next communication or by the end of the message.
I heard from somebody, they said that the more emotionally charged the message, the more personal the delivery needs to be. Right. So if this is going to be, don't give bad news over email, pick up the phone. If you can see them in person, even better. But the more emotional it is, the more personal your delivery needs to be. And I think oftentimes because of that, because it's emotional, we try to hide behind an email. And I think that's the wrong direction. You need to lean in when it's emotional, and don't hide behind your keyboard.
The other thing I would say is if you're delivering okay news or positive news, don't skirt the small wins. Call them out. Don't glaze over them. Just because we hit our goal objectives, but we didn't crush the KPIs, doesn't mean everybody sucks and needs to work harder. I mean, we do need to work harder to reach the goals. I'm not dismissing that, but celebrate the wins and don't glaze over the small things, because those small things matter to people because it's their job. So give acknowledgement where acknowledgement is due, even if it's insignificant to you.
10 years from now, we're going to look back and laugh at what?
How goofy our communication has been while we've got 4 generations in the workforce.
I'll give you a hot take. I think we're going to look back and laugh at email.
Yes. We're totally.
I think something's going to replace email, and thank God. And in 10 years, we're going to look back and be like, hold on, you did what? Yeah, I think we get rid of email in the next 10 years.
I'd get behind that. I'm okay.
I'd definitely sign up for that. I don't know what's going to replace it, but gosh, can't wait. All right, wrapping up. Does corporate communication actually reflect how much a company really values its people?
Yes.
The
answer is yes. If it's authentic and genuine, you probably have a better culture. If it's bullshit generator and propaganda, you probably got a toxic environment and you're lying to yourself. Pure and
I'm going to take the counterpoint. I know visionaries that really sincerely, authentically care about their people. However, their blind spot is culture. And so their communication can be tone deaf, but they sincerely care.
Again, I think people, that example I gave earlier, the chaotic Friday meetings,
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with what you just said, but because it's authentic and genuine, the people understand it.
It gets through.
I think it's when it's yes, you can always be better to connect with the culture, but
sure,
there's an effort to connect with the culture, even if it's not connecting most Fridays, but it's the genuine act of trying is where people engage.
That's really interesting. I think you're right. I think if you sincerely care, it comes through.
Yes.
And if you don't, that also comes through.
Yes.
What's your main takeaway from today?
Jargon, buzzwords are just ego drivers. Be authentic, be real, you'll better connect, and you might be surprised on how much progress you can actually make, as opposed to kidding yourself you're making it better with ego-driven BS. I'll add a positive to that one because that was negative.
Hold on. What you said makes me feel convicted of my manual dictation device. I probably need to tone it down a little bit.
I'll give you the positive one.
All right.
If you are trying to be authentic, genuinely trying, you don't have to be perfect. Don't worry about perfect communication. Just be real, just be authentic, and you'll be surprised on how much the people will connect with it. put the time and energy to listen to it. If you put the time and energy into it, they will too. So you may suck at it. I suck at it, but that doesn't mean I don't try. And again, people can pick that up. And if you're genuinely trying to do the right thing, it will connect.
Love it. Thanks for listening. Would love to hear some of the worst or funniest emails that you've ever received. Some of the worst abuses of buzzwords that you've seen in a corporate context. Tag us, leave us a comment. I would love to see what you guys have experienced. Thanks for listening.
Make work not suck. Our podcast that talks about exactly that. Our process, vision, journey, culture, and results. We present real-world business solutions that make the difference. Our goal is to make work not suck. Hosted by Ryan Hodges, co-host Daniel Steer. Join us each episode and make work not suck.